I guess you could say this game is very engaging. Fire Emblem is a saga that I'm very fond of, but if I think about it seriously, I don't really like any of the games. Fire Emblem is a saga that I pretend to own, in the sense that I know exactly one person who has played more games of the saga than me. So with Firegast's permission, I declare myself the ambassador of Fire Emblem on Video Game SA YouTube, and as such I'm going to make a video destroying its latest installment. Fire Emblem Engage is one of the most Fire Emblems ever, mainly because its story strives to be as cliché as possible and to recycle as much as it can for previous games, especially Awakening. And also for the obvious reason, the main mechanic of this game, the emblems. When I saw them in the trailer, just as it happens to me now, the question arose, why? Awakening was the last game of the saga before the cancellation and bankruptcy. It was the team's farewell. What the fuck is Engage that deserves this great celebration of the history of the saga? I'll answer. Nothing. Engage is nothing. Just the latest money grab. We wanted to appeal to the broadest possible audience, so we made the story bad on purpose and relied exclusively on fan service for it to sell. Engage is a fun video game, don't get me wrong, but it has such a bad story that it doesn't deserve to have brought back characters from previous games. At worst, what it accomplishes trying to cling to their glory to get you to buy the game because look everybody, it's Smurf! Is to drag their names to the mud. But let's go in order. Emblems. Turns out the emblem mechanic it's pretty cool. Since Intelligent Systems discarded the pairings, which was my favorite mechanic of the saga, the emblems make a good substitute for a mechanic that allows you to customize somewhat the units, increasing the strength of the one that hits fast but weak, for example. Emblems are now the ones that qualify units to use weapons, which is a requirement to promote and change class, which had always been the other way around in the history of the saga. Changing class used to be what allowed you to use new weapons, which you had no other way to learn. The emblems also bring their own weapons that you can use when you enter Super Saiyan mode, which is a touch of fanservice that I really liked, having Ike's sword, which is fucking rad. And they inherit abilities, which is one of my favorite mechanics of the game. Everything that resembles planning different builds for the units is something I really like. What I don't like so much is how pivotal the fucking emblems are to the plot. We'll talk about it later. Emblems aside, this game has little news, especially in terms of its excuse of a story. Engage is a pretty standard Fire Emblem in the sense that we're finally back to having a single game with a single path instead of 3 of each per installment. Where I think this game shines, because I found Three Houses especially very disappointing in this regard, probably because of how ambitious its 3.5 paths were, is in the maps. Fire Emblem is a turn-based strategy game. It's not like the units do anything, have any special attacks beyond what the emblems now give us, so the only source of complexity, innovation and freshness in these games has to come from the maps. And in my humble opinion, Engage's maps have regained the standard of quality that this saga should offer. There are none of them that are like, oh my god, this is the best map I've ever played in my life, but very few I could say are bad or even mediocre. I've liked them all, many of them with their new mechanics and or obstacles like rivers, tides, quicksand, meteorites and avalanches detonated by remote control. We've had castle defenses as in the Ike game, we've had gigantic bridges with trenches, we've had snowy maps, a naval battle, a classic in the saga, a landing in a port city where the enemies are waiting for you, but if you're smart you can wait for them to come and barricade yourself and turtle in your own ship to defeat them easily. This map will be my favorite. Maps in complete darkness in which the enemies are hunting you, and then you have this one where the boss is hidden and you have to play hide and seek. Wow, that was definitely something. And how to forget the one where the music plagiarized The Witcher? It's so funny plagiarizing The Witcher, I will fucking end you! I found this game to be a lot of fun to play, and it's mainly because I think the maps are cool. I will complain about a couple of ridiculous difficulty spikes that the game has in chapter 12 and 17. Please, Intelligent Systems, make a normal difficulty curve. Arigatou gozaimasu. But hey, a positive comment on the difficulty of the saga. Finally, the enemy reinforcements don't appear and act in the same turn. Really, between that and the stone of going back in time, they've completely ironed out the rough edges, the unfairness of previous games, and now it really is super enjoyable that you can afford to play aggressively and make mistakes. Very well done, Intelligent Systems, truly. There is some discrepancy on this notion that strategy games should punish lack of strategic thinking, but I disagree on the implementation of that punishment. there's nothing I hate more than wasting my time and wasting an hour of it because fucking reinforcement appeared out of nowhere for my back and killed a unit is the polar opposite of fun for me. That is the thing I hate from Awakening, otherwise my favorite in the saga because of the pairing system. So yeah, I heavily support these mechanics that mitigate the tedium and harsh punishment of the previous titles. One of such harsh punishments, and I'm not complaining by the way, I found this situation quite funny, has been that in training one of my units I put her to fight the boss of a stage, that is to kill the boss of that stage. I mean, there was a 95% chance of killing him. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the cheeky bastard dodged my 95% accuracy hit, and with a mere 7% chance of crit, he jumped in the air shouting, "I will take your life!" and one-shot my unit. With no resets left, I had to leave my unit dead, and the truth is I didn't even care. It was so funny I let her stay dead forever. Funniest shit I've ever seen. Back to the maps. The paralogs are an example of fan service that I enjoyed. I've played those whose games I've completed. Free Houses, Fate, Awakening, Radiant Dawn, Path of Radiance, and I've played Roy's game and completed Marth as well, but I didn't like the map choices there, or anywhere actually, except for Corins. Usually they kind of weren't the map that came to my mind when I thought of their respective games. I'm probably alone in this, so pay it no mind. Either way, it's also been some of my favorite content in the game. If we look at it exclusively from an amount of quality Fire Emblem content that this game offers perspective, I would dare to say that it's very high. 80 hours took me to beat it, 80 hours of maps that I consider to be high quality, so in that sense I have no complaints about the game. I mean, if I'm honest, 80 hours are a lot of hours. Personally, I would like my games to last less than 40, but well, it's not right to complain that the game has a lot of quality content. And by quality content, I don't just mean that the game is fun.
The game is fun.
I also mean that the game itself looks very pretty, and very surprised here, because some of these games' trailers made it look almost like a Pokemon game, and if that doesn't trigger all the warnings and red flags, I really don't know what else to say. It was serious shit. But the game comes out and it looks pretty fucking cool actually. All said, I'm neither a game developer nor do I come from a liberal arts background. All I can say is my uninformed opinion, but I'd be lying if I'd said I didn't like what I see. It seems to me that it has an artistic style that, although it is somewhat simple and unrealistic, I like it. A bit too fucking much anime to my taste, but still. I've had some occasional frames drop, but nothing more than that, which is especially striking since Garrett Mac looked like a PowerPoint presentation. And this game also has very ambitious and cool 3D environments that it moves smoothly. Shoutouts to the designers who thought of the idea of letting the player walk around the 3D map that has been completely rendered for the chess fights and has no reason not to be reused, letting the player appreciate the work that has gone into modeling such environments. Spectacular detail that the environment fucking breaks on occasion when the units attack through it. What the actual fuck is this? When has this ever happened in a Fire Emblem? What an absolute scorcher. But when staring at the abyss, it might stare back at me. Somewhat may say, Meni, you're praising a 60-buck AAA game from having 3D environments and stable frame rates. Don't you think you're lowering the bar too much? And the answer to that is, I don't really know. I can only speak of my personal judgment, and maybe I'm easy to impress, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy with the technical/artistic side of this game. It even has a first-person mode. What is this, Firewatch Engage? Although the home console titles were messing around at the time of release, I wouldn't say that Fire Emblem has ever been top of the class graphically and performance-wise. Far from it, actually. And I think that we can value the most ambitious game in this aspect that Intelligent System has released in years. Especially when the story that has been released is not only the least ambitious but the actual worst of the saga. So here comes the other half of the game, the other half of the whole Fire Emblem experience. We've already talked about its mechanics, the chessboard, and now it's time to talk about what's in between. A fucking anime. The story.
You came!
The story. Fire Emblem Engage starts plagiarizing Awakening with an in media res sequence, but I don't understand if it actually is in media res or not, because there are characters that will appear later, so it's not a flashback, but then the scene doesn't happen later in the game, so it's not an in media res. Anyway, moving on, the protagonist wakes up from its dream, like in Awakening, to meet the generic old paladin obligatory in the whole saga, the wizard who, well, and the underage but still romanceable anime girl with a staff. Wow, what a repertoire of quirky and original characters. How did you come up with the idea? Anyway, on the way to the palace, like in Awakening, some corrupted zombie-like monsters appear out of nowhere, like in Awakening, only to be saved by a character who is direct family of the protagonist. When you get to the palace, you meet your mother, and as soon as you do, she is killed. Like in Fates, but also like in Awakening if you compare her with Emerin, Grom's sister. So far, the only innovative thing about this game is a complete lack of shame shown when modeling the boobs of the female characters who aren't little girls. Except for that one who is a little girl and has boobs anyway, for some reason. Thanks, Japan. Although, well, no kidding, if I really have to choose the lesser evil here, if Japan is really going to make me choose between sexualizing women and sexualizing little girls, I choose the former. Going back to the story of Fire Emblem Engage, one of its problems is that it's the most generic, uninspired thing in the whole saga, for my taste bordering on insulting. Everything it does, it copies from the saga and makes it worse. And as you can see, it especially copies Awakening. From that game, Engage got the idea of the protagonist in the world map as a chapter selection. The idea isn't bad, but for fuck's sake, stop copying things from Awakening! Fire Emblem Fates and Three Houses attempted to tell some of the most dramatic and tragic stories in the medium. The story of one who has family on both sides of a conflict and has to choose who to support, who lives and who dies, there being a clear bad choice that generated a lot of tension, where the princess wanted to complete the campaign quickly and without war crimes before their monster of a father arrived and set about slaughtering and torturing prisoners. It was, I won't say unbearable, but definitely tough. And when I remember the story Three Houses was trying to tell, my eyes water. A teacher with one of 3 classes to choose from shortly before a war that will kill most of them and whose choice of side determines, once again, who lives and who dies at your hands. Not to mention that Edelgard, Dimitri and Claude are, in my opinion, the 3 best characters of the saga by far. I'm personally a big fan of Lucina, but she has nothing to do against those 3. Still, I want to appreciate that Engage makes her say my favorite line a couple of times.
I challenge my fate! Then I challenge that fate.
Having only completed the church path, I can't say that Fates and Three Houses managed to tell a good story, but damn, they tried. What the hell is Engage trying to do? The Dark Dragon wants to resurrect, so he will try to snatch the MacGuffin from the protagonist by employing the half-naked big booby lady who will die a couple of chapters before the Dark Dragon, albeit long after the corrupt king whom the Dark Dragon will betray and kill mid-plot. Really, to tell that, don't tell anything. It's not just that the story is uninspired and cringy, it's that the saga's fans are sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. I insist. Fate and Three Houses were trying! They were trying! This is not acceptable! You can shove your MacGuffins up your ass! A friend of mine told me very eloquently, there are 2 teams and intelligent systems, the one that makes the good gameplay and the one that makes the good stories. To which I replied, and how many years have passed since the last time the second team came to work?
You came!
But it's true, if there's one thing Fire Emblem Engage manages to do is to make the rest of the games seem better. That's not a compliment. Anyway, as I was saying, the other side of this coin, though, the worst thing about Engage's story is that it revolves about fucking MacGuffins. When your story is full of these dialogues, give me the MacGuffins! No, you give me the MacGuffins! All the alarms should go off because you have a serious problem. I don't want to pretend that I'm the all-knowing god of storytelling, but I do think that objects are much less interesting than people. That's all I ask of a story, that it not be full of MacGuffins. It doesn't even have to have an interesting plot or have characters with any personality that aren't a walking cliche. I swear I don't know how else to lower the bar, I'm telling you. Along with Corin, Alear is my least favorite protagonist in the saga, but who is not that bad voiced either, in the case of the English male actor. Actually, according to interviews, there were plans to make Toothpaste Guy a vulnerable human being who suffered and had some personality, but Nintendo stepped in and censored the fuck out of them to the generic point in which they now stand. So thank you, Nintendo, once again. This was part of a plan to make this game appeal to the broadest possible audience, because apparently Three Houses sold poorly, 3.5 million copies wasn't enough. When the team admits to making the story worse and more generic just to sell more copies, you know things are going smoothly. Interview in the description. So yeah, along with mediocrity, I blame corporate greed for all the failings this game has, which aren't few. For example, the rest of the characters in this story, that are whatever. In most cases there are anime cliches. We have the masochist, we have the stupid one, the other stupid one, the lolly, the other lolly, the yet another lolly, the lolly with boobs, the other sadistic lolly, the corrupt king, the evil big booby lady who is the right hand of the Dark Dragon, and also the aforementioned generic bad guy with no personality. Not to mention all the characters / units that only have a gimmick, a curiosity. I'm Japanese and I like to fight. I am insufferable. I like fairy tales and weird food, and I only talk about those 2 things in all my supports. I do the same with tea. Which brings us to the supports. The idea of Fire Emblem of the war story focused more on plot, with then the optional personal conversations I quite like. It provides a chance to go deeper into the characters for whomever wants to, within a story, a plot that doesn't have to be delayed because of it if the player doesn't want to. However, in this saga the supports are famous for being utter garbage. I'm kidding, but infamous is the "oops, I went to the bathroom and you were naked, oops, it happened again" support, and sadly it's not the only example. "Hey, you're a fucking psycho, you disgust me, how did you end up as a healer?" It's what it is, everyone dies, get over it, bro. "You're right, I've never met anyone as wise as you. Let our comrades die, how could I have been so foolish as to want to save them?" But I'm doing a little bit of cherry picking here, I'm being a tad naughty. Truth is, the saga has bad supports just as it has good supports. Awakening itself has a bad reputation for the bathroom naked support, but it has, for example, Cordelia, who is unable to end up as Chrome's romantic interest even though she's in love with him, but several of her other romantic supports let you know that she's more obsessed than in love, and it's actually good for her to get away from her crush and accept a non-idealized love. Fates has good supports among the Brothers of Nor, for example. Three Houses tries heavily for the students not to be cardboard cutouts that you take with you in your adventures without personality. I especially enjoyed Felix's supports with Dimitri, in which the latter is the kind and polite young gentleman and the former is the edgy and asshole teenager, but you discover a deeper layer of both, in which Felix proves to be the good, decent human being and sees a demon inside Dimitri, a rabid boar hiding behind the princess chivalrous facade. And this support is one of the few clues at the beginning of the game of how utterly messed up poor Dimitri's head is. Oh, Dimitri, my poor thing. Having these great characters as protagonists, Three Houses had it quote-unquote easier when it came to making good interactions between these characters. It's as if it were a fertile ground where it's easy to cultivate meaningful interactions, although it's not impossible to do cool things with more mediocre characters. I don't want to suggest that Ike's game has mediocre characters, but I did want to give examples of supports that I like in that game. Ike's with Titania and Soren, respectively. In the first ones, Titania tells Ike how she met her father, a character you will know almost nothing about if you don't read this kind of support, and Ike ends up inducing that she is in love with him. Soren confesses to Ike that he's an orphan, that he's a victim of abuse, that he's a half-breed, and that he's his only friend and fears to lose him by telling him all this. To which Ike, consistent with his character, accepts him and bonds with him more deeply, and it's like really nice all around. I don't know, the saga has had everything. I wanted to stop in supports that I deem good to criticize the bad ones of Engage with that criterion. Good examples of Engage's support all this, in my humble opinion, are Princess Ivy explaining something she foreshadowed in the main story, how she worshipped the Dying Dragon religiously, and how that started as an act of rebellion against a court that daily conjured and plotted to kill her mother. Or as her sister's mother, stepsister? Hortensia's mother was a wonderful woman, and during the sister's support, the older one tells the younger one that she has not only become a woman like her mother, but that she has even surpassed her in many ways. One of my favorite supports is Princess Lolly's with my boy Prince Alcrest, where they both share that they have nightmares of their respective older brother dying in the war, and that ends with a secret pact that they will both protect each other's older brother, forming a secret political alliance that is sealed by the following phrase: "We will never carry the crown, but we will carry each other's burdens." And this is very consistent with one of Alcrest's consistent details through the game, that he is very protective, especially of his brother. I love it. Likewise, Princess Chimera is not as much of a retarded goofball as she seems, and this detail is super consistent both in the plot and in her supports. The one she has with Ivy I deem cool. It's like, "Oh, we're so different, come camping with me." And Ivy, who is supposed to be the more manipulative and intelligent, is approaching the other only to figure out her weaknesses, but Chimera proves to be even smarter, and in support A reveals that she knew from the beginning. It is insisted that they are indeed very different, and the support is concluded. When it seems to me that this Machiavellian side of Chimera is a very interesting common point that could have been explored more thoroughly. The same as the one that Chimera has with my other boy Diamant, which, unlike the previous one, has a super interesting beginning, and the conclusion I think is garbage. Gigachat Diamant, who is super stoic, says that he trains a lot, and that Chimera instead of spends the day shopping with the townsfolk, that she doesn't want to defend her people, he accuses her. To which Chimera responds that how is she supposed to defend her people if she doesn't know who they are, which kind of reveals, being consistent with this side of the character, that there's a responsible and capable monarch behind that facade. And the next two supports are the first one singing and the other exercising. Conclusion, each one is good at their own thing. End of support. And it's like nothing is explored in the slightest. Perhaps seeing the humiliated future king singing in the town square might have had political repercussions that could have been talked about, but I don't know. Instead, it's all quote-unquote resolved in the laziest, most unimaginative and superficial way possible. It gets gets to the point of, hey, do you think peace is possible? And the answer is, good question. As Crown Prince, I ponder it a lot. Which brings us to the crappy supports. We are such good friends. Oh yes, indeed, we are best friends in the world. I love you so much, man. Me too. Duel me. No, but I can't duel you because you're tired and it wouldn't be fair. This character is, haha, I'm a doctor. And all of his supports are just that. This is the one with the fucking fairy tales and the food. Hilarious. Princess Lolly only talks about tea. It's horrible. It's a disgrace. Delete this character from the game. And while you're at it, delete the dancer as well. And his don't cook, I'm on a diet support, which goes on and on and on. It's not just the one. In this support, my boy lets his anime side come out and gets down on the ground vowing to apologize to a wolf. The truth is that this is very good. Thank you, anime. No, but that's all the fault of the translation in Japanese. I'm sure what they're saying is yes. How right you are. It's always the translation. Japan has never written anything poorly. It's us Westerners who are stupid and not a single one of us has ever known any Japanese. In fact, these dialogues all made up. The quote-unquote translators would gather and try to guess what the characters were saying based on what was happening on screen. In short, although there are good supports in Engage, I can't say I'm happy with them. I find most of them mediocre and many of them really bad. That said, I'm very thankful that they are fully voiced. I mean, can't you imagine another AAA Nintendo story-heavy franchise but without voice acting? Speaking of which, the voice acting of this game could be worse. There have been cringy moments, but also others that have punched me right in the gut. Funny how Alcrest has managed to do both.
Dreams where my brother Diamant is taken from me. That is...
This is our last sparring match, isn't it, Father?
Father, if you have to die, let it be by my hand. This would be an unbearable burden for Diamant. So I must thank you for everything. I love you. I always will.
Too bad they chose the generic route of killing her father because he had an interesting relationship with his sons, that the other one protects the father because he doesn't see himself capable of living without him, and the father loves the younger son very much, who on the other hand has no self-esteem, to the most exaggerated extreme. Thank you, anime. I would have liked to go deeper into this relationship, but, well. Going back to the English dubbing, there were moments that made me laugh, like Chimera singing the Meat song.
Ah yeah! Meaty! Meaty!
And Magic Man's funny words.
Oh, it's the Divine Dragon! The Divine Dragon!
My favorite actress would be Marnie's. I think she has captured the goofy side of the character very well, but she also knows how to show some humanity.
You can't just leave me... Hey! Wait up! What? No way. I don't want to work with you that much. No praise, no thank yous. I hate you. As soon as we're off this boat, we're enemies.
You do hate me, after all. So surely you'll be happier.
Right. So... yes. I'm done talking. This is a waste of my time.
And speaking of showing humanity, the part where the last of the four hounds die, I cried very, very hard. Literally, I mean it. I don't know how this shitty story managed to make me cry, still wonder to this day. They managed to humanize them so much in a very short time, and it broke my heart to see that they saw each other as family. That's why I can't stand the big booby lady saying, I love the hounds like my family, as long as they keep obeying. And it's like, bro, why did you have to ruin the previous line? How good it would have been if instead of punishing Marnie with sadism, you had protected her from the Jack Dragon, taking the punishment for your stepdaughter. I don't know, in the end they do go down the path of family and humanizing them all, so nice. As well as then in the chapter of traveling back in time, they foreshadow this family thing, showing the moment when she discovers how cool it would be to have one. The bad thing about the Four Hounds is that 80% of the chapters in this game have some combination of these villains as bosses, and again they keep retreating. Can you please stop retreating? This is like the 8th chapter I've defeated you in a row. I'm sick of this. I'm killing you. Stop coming back. And that as much as I love their presentation, they long overstay their welcome, and it becomes unbearable long before the end of the game. It's ridiculous and lazy. And that lazy is one of the words I would use to describe the story of this game. Not only does it use the laziest of screenwriters' devices, the MacGuffin, but I insist every single thing we see in this story we've already seen in previous games, in better games. Maybe Engage's maps are very good, but it's not like it's the only Fire Emblem with good maps, as Engage itself demonstrates with its paralogs from previous games, which are pretty cool. The graphics are indeed the best in the series, and I think its emblem mechanics are very good. So good in fact that I would have liked to see them in a game that deserved them, that deserved to call upon the heroes and games of the past and pay homage to them, because what I feel Engage does regarding its story at least is plagiarism. The graphics, awesome. The gameplay, awesome. The story, the worst I've seen in the saga by far. Still, I enjoyed Fire Emblem Engage, even though the shadow of the game it could have been if its writers have made an effort and the executives and shareholders didn't destroy the game to cash in, has been a very large and opaque one. I still enjoyed the game. What I do regret is that even though I like Engage, the best thing this game has achieved, at least in me, is to awaken my desire to revisit those games of the past featured so heavily in Engage, to revisit games that are better than this one. Thank you very much for watching. It's always easier to praise than it is to berate. I don't want to give the impression that I speak from a position of all-knowing godhood. This is just my opinion. So yeah, I hope you liked it. Next video should be about Last of Us 2 or Fallout 1, whatever comes next. Hope to see you there. Take care. See ya!